So, good evening, everybody. Namaskar. I'm sorry, I think the people at the back can't see anything. My apologies. I would stand, but there's a camera looking at me, so I can't. But I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, so that's enough. Just close your eyes, go to sleep, and you'll hear the voice droning on. So, the subject of this evening's talk is about how to bring the Dharma because you know, we all have daily lives, right? We all have everyday lives, and it's very important that we integrate our everyday life with some genuine spiritual principles. Sometimes Buddhism, at least in Buddhist countries, people think, you know, going to the temple or doing a meditation course or reading a book or chanting some mantras, that is Dharma. And then the rest of the day is everyday worldly activity. And also, of course, especially in the Tibetan tradition, most books start by assuring you that the first thing you have to do is to give up all your worldly life and go and live up on the top of a mountain. So that gives the idea that in order to genuinely practice, we need to renounce everything and go away, and that if we stay in the family, if we have work, if we have jobs, if we have social life, then that is just a lot of wasting time, a lot of worldly activity, and of no benefit. So if we think like that, then clearly the Dharma is a waste of time. So that, I think, is a very mistaken way of looking at what genuine spirituality is about. Not just Buddhism, but in general, any kind of spiritual path has, how can I put it, our daily life is the Dharma. You know, it's not separated. This, when we're doing religious things, that's Dharma, and everyday life is worldly activity, and then there's this big division. Then never ever will we transform, because the amount of time we can give to strictly considered to be religious activities compared with our everyday life is so small. So the talk this evening is really about how to make our daily life our Dharma practice. Because it's very important to recognize that Buddhism is not just about studying Buddhist philosophy and understanding difficult intellectual concepts. Nor is it only about doing formal meditation, retreats, vipassana, or any other kind of practices. That is Dharma. Workplace, dealing with the problems of life, that is not Dharma. Then it's not going to work. If we look, even in traditional Buddhist not just studying philosophical thoughts. Many, many qualities needed, such as, well, if we take it, generosity, ethical conduct, loving kindness, compassion, patience, and so forth. All of which, if we think about it, require other people. They require that we are actually living within society. Because if we just by ourselves or in a very formal meditation environment, then we can think that we are being very kind and very ethical and very patient and so forth, because that environment is set up for that. But what about when we go home? Actually, our family are a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to enhance all these qualities of the heart, which any genuine spiritual path encourages us to cultivate. Our families are a wonderful opportunity so lovely to people that we don't really know very well. We can be very nice even to people that we meet along the way, but the people that we spend all our time with, those are the ones with whom we need to really cultivate all these qualities of the heart. So right from the beginning, okay, let's make our day into our Dharma practice. It's very useful in the morning to start with some very... His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that the first thing when he wakes up, his first thought is that he's going to spend the day being of benefit to others. That his whole day is going to be dedicated to making others happy. That whoever he meets, he wants them, just by meeting him, to be that little more, giving some joy to people. And of course, this is what happens when people meet with someone like His Holiness. Then, even if it's a very brief meeting, they feel enhanced and inspired just by meeting him, because his intention is for the other. So that's his first thought when he wakes up. He doesn't wake up and think, oh God, another day. To live my life for the happiness and well-being of others. And so we can do something like that. Whatever our initial thought might be, our next thought can be, may I use this day to be of benefit to everyone whom I meet. Then, if we have the chance, please do a little quiet practice. It's very helpful just to set the tone of the day by sitting, even for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if we don't have time for more. Just a quiet awareness, for example, of the breath coming in, the breath going out. Just bring our mind quietly within us, with this quiet ability to relax and just be aware, not aware of anything in particular, just that sense of being. If you have a formal practice, as many of you might well do it. My Lama Kamtu Rinpoche, he said to me, always keep your practice Then if we have more time and more enthusiasm, we can do longer. But still, that nucleus is there, and it's not heavy. The Dharma should be like yeast in heavy dough, right? You don't need much, but what you've got, it lightens the whole dough. You don't throw the dough away, right? We're not throwing away our daily life. We're using our daily life and simply mixing it with a little yeast to make the whole thing lighter. So our spiritual practice should not make it heavier, more difficult. It should make everything that much lighter. So we start the day by bringing in awareness. In many ways, the secret of blending our daily life with the Dharma more present. So often what we do an action and our mind has gone somewhere else. The mind and the body are not together. So this ability just to try to bring our mind back to what we are doing in this moment is something which takes no time, but completely transforms our day. The more conscious we are, the more aware we are, the more present we are. At the same time, the mind becomes more clear, more attentive. And this ability to be aware, we can carry into all our actions. In fact, nowadays, as many of you know, psychiatrists and neuroscientists and so forth are very much recommending that we cultivate the ability to become more mindful, more aware during our day, because this is a way of really enhancing our abilities. It's a way to really help us to get through even very stressful times, even very busy times, without being weighted down and exhausted. It's a way to revitalize our whole day. So the first thing is to try to learn how to cultivate the ability to become more awake, more conscious, more aware, more mindful. If we never did anything in this life, if we could learn just to be more present and mindful, and at the same time more kind, that would already be an extraordinary life. So we are going to make a determination that we are going to cultivate awareness and a good heart. And we are going to use everything. Kindness, what does it mean? Kindness comes from the understanding that just as I would obviously rather be happy than miserable, all beings would rather be happy than not happy. You can, if you're living in a city, you can really sit and think about this, because they're not happy. And probably everyone has problems. Probably every single person that we perceive has difficulties, has challenges. everything would be all right if only. But there's always an if only. And when we recognize that in our own life, and we send love and compassion to ourselves, as the Buddha recommended, but then we also send it out to others. Recognizing that every single person, not just people, but animals, insects, anything, birds, fish, every being would like some kindness. So we can wish them that. If possible, we can help them. If we cannot help them physically, at least we can send them good wishes, and at least we don't hurt them. So, we start the day by cultivating this thought. May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free from suffering. And then, every single person that we meet, whether it's someone very close to us, like our partner, our children, our parents, our family, our neighbors, people, colleagues at work, all of them are our opportunity for practice. So every single one of them, whether there's someone very close to us, someone we feel quite neutral towards, we see them but we don't think about them as people, just something you see, or somebody even who is very difficult for us, creates problems for us that we don't like very much. All of these people are our opportunity for cultivating inner qualities of the heart. For example, a very important quality which we need is the quality of forbearance or patience. And that we cannot ever achieve if we do and is always sweet and kind. Well, that's lovely. And we think, oh, I'm ever such a lovely person, really. Look, I'm always nice. But it's because everybody else is nice. And that's nice, of course. We would like people to be nice. But nonetheless, rather than getting upset and angry and, wanting to get our own back on these people and create problems, if instead of that we think, oh, this person is wonderful, they are so helpful, look, they're so nasty, what a wonderful opportunity for me to practice patience. Because patience is one of the qualities needed on the path. It's one of the paramita. How can I practice if everybody is nice? Naive, and in situations where people are trying to cheat us or are really abusive, that we just let them get away with it. But even if we stand up for ourselves and, try to rectify the situation skillfully, it still should come from an attitude of understanding and compassion, fearless compassion, rather than anger or fear. Because if we respond to difficulties by becoming angry and defensive, then that just creates more and more reaction from their side, reaction from our side. And that the attitude with which we prevent it should be one of power and compassion, not of anger and negative emotions. This is very important. This is again why awareness is very important in our daily life, because we should try to become more conscious of what is going on inside us. When people, when we are dealing with people, then what emotions are being evoked? And if they are negative emotions, of negative emotions, the easier it is to deal with them and transform them. If we don't notice them until they're well ahead, then it's very difficult to draw back. They're being controlled by our mind. Anyone who has ever tried to meditate will know when he compared our minds to raging elephants in rut, he was probably closer to the mark. Ever looked at their mind and tried to bring their mind to one-pointed concentration will know that we are not even the masters of our own minds. We live in our mind. Even in sleep, we cannot escape from our own mind. I mean, the reason why, as we know, the world is in such a crazy state is because it is in the control of people who themselves are out of control. I mean, we cannot even control our mind, what to speak of controlling other people, controlling whole countries. So, therefore, our daily life should be brought into the compass of our efforts to really begin to become the masters of our own mental consciousness. But you cannot spend all your time in retreats. And the important thing is to take your daily life and make that into a practice. What do we need to practice? We need to practice awareness. Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a great Vietnamese master, in his group, they have what are called Mindfulness Bells, which is that little bell, you know, you're doing your whatever you're. But in this moment, what is my body doing? How is my posture? What is happening in the mind? What am I thinking? What are the feelings? What are the emotions in this moment? I think nowadays on smartphones they have apps which are mindfulness bells, and you can set them at arbitrary times or just once every hour or something like that. And it's a way of practicing how to bring ourselves back into the moment. I mean, the great masters say we should observe our mind at all times, but if we can't even observe our mind once or twice a day, then there's no way we're going to observe our mind all day. But we gradually learn as much as we can remember to bring our mind back into this moment. At this moment, what is happening? How the body feels. What is the state of our mind? And during the day, if we find that our mind is in a negative state, then to recognize that, accept it, and change it. And so all the people that we are meeting during our day, all the activities which we are caught up with during the day, all of this is our opportunity to cultivate awareness, to cultivate kindness, to cultivate compassion if people are having problems, rejoicing if something good happens to somebody, and even if it's something which we had wanted for ourselves and it's given to someone else, to rejoice for them that they are happy. And generous not only in listen. That is also a very important generosity. To just be there for someone. Even we can't solve their problems, but we can give them our attention, and we can give them our empathy, our sympathy. Close to us, our family or friends or colleagues or strangers, each one His Holiness the Dalai Lama is so loved is because he has this ability that whoever he meets, even if it's in a line of people, each person that he meets, he acknowledges them. And he sees, I think, their Buddha nature. He sees their potential. He doesn't see the mask which we're all wearing, he sees the true person behind the mask. This is why politicians often look very stiff when they meet him. You know, they don't want him to look at the person behind the mask, right? That's very threatening. But ordinary people, it moves them very deeply because they feel that he sees them and totally accepts them with love and compassion. He doesn't judge them. He just totally, for that millisecond even maybe, he's with them. And so people are very moved by that. And so we are not the Dalai Lama, but we can nonetheless recognize that we can give people that much attention. All of us, every single being. The Buddha said, there's a story in the sutras where the king, I think it was Bimbisara, was on the balcony with the queen. And he said to her, well, I've been thinking about it, and you know, I think that in all the world, I love myself the most. Who do you love most, my dear? And so she thought, and then she said, yes, I think you're right. In all the world, I love myself the most, which I don't think was what he was hoping for. But anyway, then they went to the Buddha, and they said, look, we've been discussing this, and we realize that in all the world, we love ourselves the most. And what do you think? And the Buddha said, yes. To each one, his own self is most dear. For that reason, we should give loving kindness to all beings. Because for each one, their own self is most dear. So then why not acknowledge that? That each one is very sensitive to their own well-being and their own suffering. And if we feel that about ourselves, then we would be aware of that for everyone else. There is no high or low. There is no important or unimportant. Each person, doesn't matter their social standing, is most precious to themselves. And just as we, therefore, do not wish others to hurt us, therefore, we should show the same respect and caring for all other beings. So it's logical, isn't it? If you think about it, right? I mean, there is no high or low as far as everybody's self-concern. So therefore, we should respect that in all beings. I mean, even just a smile, even just thank you. I was reading an article today in the newspaper, maybe you read it too, about how rarely Indians say Dhanyavad. And why is it that Indians so rarely show gratitude? And they were saying, fortunately nowadays, even people who don't speak English have gotten more into the habit of saying thank you, and you're welcome. And so even though they don't get into shukriya or dhanyavad, at least if they say thank you, just that acknowledgement of others. People who serve us in the public sphere. You know, conductors and waiters and everybody. It doesn't matter, I mean, whoever. Each one is precious to themselves. And just to thank them for anything which they do. Say thank you. Smile. I mean, if you see somebody who is looking especially nice, tell them, oh, that's very nice. Oh, thank you. And maybe it's made their day. It's so simple, it's not difficult. And when we meet difficult people, then again, to recognize that this is our opportunity to really look at our own mind and to transform our natural reaction of wishing to retaliate by considering that they are giving us this great opportunity for practicing genuine patience. It doesn't mean that we suppress anger. It's not about suppressing. It's about recognizing and transforming. It's not that we, it's not ever that we suppress our negative emotions. It's that if negative emotions come up, we recognize them, we accept that that's what we're feeling, but then we really make efforts to transform that and recognize this is our opportunity for cultivating more positive emotions and not giving way to negative emotions. So our day is filled with opportunities for practice, all based on this basic quality of being aware, being mindful, being present, and seeing that everything which we do, if we do it with mindfulness, with attention, is a Dharma practice. What do we think Dharma is? Buddha Dharma is all about taming the mind. The Buddha said, let the wise man tame his mind. A tamed mind brings happiness. So we're trying to be happy. And we bring happiness by making others happy. How many people throughout our day can we bring just that little more happiness to them? By being polite, by being friendly, by smiling, by saying thank you. It's not that difficult. We don't have to be kind. I mean, if we can't even manage that much. Sometimes people, they have, big gurus, and they've done so much sadhana, and they've done so much practice, and they've done so much this, and they've done so much that, and they're still not kind. They're not any nicer than someone who's never done anything. So what's wrong? And it's not enough just to be nice to people that you think have some influence. I mean, we should be more like the sun that just shines. Light, and to give warmth. So during the day, we cultivate this everybody else, and everybody's so focused on what they have to do and is so afraid almost. I mean, I'm not saying in India, but certainly in other countries, if you smiled at a stranger, they would probably jump, and sort of get very nervous, especially on a New York subway or something. You start smiling at everybody. Yeah. But when the situation comes, we can be kind, we can be polite. There's no problem with that. In our workplace, be helpful. Be kind, and especially to people who are having problems themselves in being kind. it is also very helpful to keep our attention where our body is and our mind is. Nowadays, everybody is so hectic and multitasking, but it has been shown by, psychiatrists and neuroscientists that multitasking is not suitable for the human brain. That the human brain, if it has to think of too many things at the same time, just becomes stressed out and inefficient, makes mistakes, and becomes exhausted. Because we are not intended to try to do too many things at the same time. And so nowadays, as I'm sure many of you know, even big organizations, like Microsoft and Google and all these big organizations are not burn out too soon. So therefore, they are now getting all their staff to do mindfulness courses, which again emphasizes that whatever task we are trying to do, we should give our full attention to that. Even if then after a while we give the attention to that and then the attention to that, but not all at the same time. Whatever action we need to own, and not all background discursive thinking or trying to hold on to something we've just done or something we have to do in the future. And merge with the task, and that also creates much more creative kind of thinking than if we are just trying on the surface to do too many things at one time, in which case the mind can never settle. So nowadays, I mean, it's very interesting. Even I was just reading India Today, which has these nice articles on happiness. Wasn't that nice? I mean, usually it's all corruption and scandals, but now this issue was on happiness. Did you read that? Any of you ever read India Today? Yeah, and so they were emphasizing about good things that people are doing, or the good things that people are doing in India, that not just all the corruption charges, the goodness, which is normally overlooked. And also they had an article on how to bring happiness into your daily life. And one of the first things they recommended was learning to be mindful. Because truthfully, it's the key. We are, since childhood, conditioned to be mindless. It's something which is, therefore, to actually bring our attention to what we are doing while we are doing is very difficult for us. We are doing one thing and at the same time thinking something else. And so this is also very stressful for the mind, and it is very inefficient. If we can bring our attention to what we are doing while we are doing it, then everything is so much more smooth. So also during the day, all right, you get up in the morning, and as I said, it's very good if we make a commitment what we're going to use the day to do something meaningful with our life and to bring some happiness to others, and do some quiet meditation. And then whatever we do next, to try to do it mindfully, especially those tasks which are normally fairly automatic, that we don't need to bring a lot of thinking into it, like brushing teeth or brushing your hair, or gentlemen who shave or anything like this. A simple action, drinking tea. To make the commitment to give one's attention to that. Not to think of other things, while we are drinking tea, not to think of what we're going to do next or what we did before, but simply to be conscious of the act of drinking. The act of combing our hair, just know it. Don't think about it. We just need to know it. Give our attention to it in a very relaxed way, to get the mind present. And then throughout the day, as I say, as often as we can remember, to bring the mind back into the present moment. What are we thinking right now? What are we feeling right now? What's going on in this moment? It doesn't take time. It just takes the ability to remember. The word which in English is translated as mindfulness is the word smriti, which, as you will know, means to remember. And so literally it means to remember what we are doing. Because normally we forget. We do something, but we're not there with what we are doing. And so the mind, not only is it inefficient, but the mind gets tired. If we can rest the mind in the present moment, just being completely conscious of what's happening in this moment, without commenting, just knowing, this knowing quality of the mind, to actually know what we are thinking, feeling, doing at the moment of doing it. That makes the mind very open and spacious. So, if we can cultivate this quality, maybe just by watching the breath, if we get very excited or very stressed out, bring the attention back, breathing in, breathing out. The breath is a very good object for us to collect ourselves, because we cannot breathe in the past or in the future. We only breathe now. So if we are really conscious of the breath, the feeling of the breath as it comes in and out, we are conscious of being present. So, at the end of the day, before going to sleep, we can think back a little. Those things which, if we did things where we got upset or angry or greedy or anything like this, we are sorry about that. We'll try and do better next time. And those times when we did something good, something, we made an effort, then, well, good, nice. We must do more of that next time. So in this way, we can encourage ourselves to take our daily life this moment to moment to moment. It's not a matter of taking time. for ourselves and for others. This is what we have our life for. We have a very precious human life. All of you are highly educated. You have for to benefit yourself, to benefit others, so that, you know, when we come to die, which we're all going to do, we can think, well, I did not waste this human life. Without regrets. Let go of the past. Let go of all our negative thoughts about what people have done to us in the past and how, you know, certainly that we want to get revenge. We forgive ourselves. We encourage ourselves. We make friends with ourselves. The first thing is to make friends with ourselves. So many people don't like themselves. Well, that's not very kind. We're stuck with ourselves. We should at least make friends. We can't leave ourselves behind. The Buddha said, first we those that we love, which is quite easy, wishing them well, wishing them happy. How fantastic if they could be happy and free from suffering. Then people that are neutral, that we don't know, we don't really think about whether they're happy or not happy. As I said, they are the center of their own universe, so respect that. And then people who we have problems with and difficulties, may they also be well and happy. People do bad things mostly because they are very deluded or because inside they are not happy. May all beings be well and happy. Not just that one, that one, that one. All beings. If beings were happy, this would be a very different world. So, to cultivate the qualities which we need in this life of tolerance, kindness, compassion, attention, we take our daily life and we use it. We don't think that just, you know, half an hour's practice now and again is going to transform. It's a moment by moment by moment task. And no. It's right now, exactly in the situation we find ourselves in, that is our opportunity to practice. And if we really bring the Dharma into our daily life, recognizing that all the qualities of generosity and ethics and tolerance and kindness and compassion and wisdom, seeing things clearly how they really are. There is no time like right now, and there is no place like right here. This is it. You never had a better opportunity in all your life. This is it. It's not something which we just can put off. So, really, please, all of us here should take our life and be grateful for the privilege we have of having this well-endowed human life, and not to waste it on things which are transitory and not so important. The most important thing we can possibly do is to tame the mind, train the mind, transform the mind. And for those really serious, eventually to transcend the conceptual mind and become liberated. What else are we here for? To benefit ourselves and to benefit others. So, I mean, one thing is that we can look at our life as a learning process. You know, somebody said, it's not a very Buddhist saying, but they said, you know, life is the schoolhouse of the soul. In other words, that it's where we learn what we're here for. We're not here just to have a good time. We're here to really grow. Go well, then they're very happy. And as soon as they don't get what they want, then they you know, go into rages because they're children and they don't know how to control their emotions. And then through the years we grow up and we, you know, we get gray hair and wrinkles and you know, but inside, so often we are still just children. When things go right, we're all smiles, and when things don't go the way we want them to go, inwardly we feel so much anger and tension and rage, just like a little child. And so the Buddha, he talked about ordinary people. He said, are the childish. And the path is to mature, to grow up, so that we are no longer controlled by these negative emotions of something I like, I've got to have it, you know, the greed and grasping and attachment to pleasure, and the anger and aversion and hatred towards anything which is unpleasing. So these emotions which in a small child are understandable, as we grow up, we should be in control of these emotions, not controlled by them anymore. We're still inwardly the childish. And so these negative emotions are in all Buddhist schools. The negative emotions are greed, this craving for pleasure, and anger, aversion, this negativity, pushing away of what is unpleasant. And then the general sense of dullness, of ignorance. Of course, in Buddhism, that is mostly in ignorance is based on the ego. And then along with that, pride and jealousy, fear and so forth. But these negative emotions, all Buddhist schools are concerned with how to deal with our negativity, these negative emotions, and especially our greedy, clinging, attached mind, and our angry and irritable, frustrated, depressed, pushing away type of mind. And of course, all of the based on the root of our avidya, of our not knowing our true nature. I mean, this is our problem, is that we identify with all the wrong things, and we completely identify with our sense of ego, of I. But that is not our true nature. And so again, the practice on a deeper level is to recognize how we identify with all the wrong things and come back to our true nature, which is our very pure primordial awareness which is like the sky. Because we don't see the sky. But these clouds come from the sky. They go back into the sky. They couldn't exist if it wasn't for the sky. But we don't notice the sky. We don't see the sky. And so we identify with all the wrong things. So because we identify with all the wrong things, and this is our fundamental ignorance or avidya, therefore we suffer. And we create suffering from everybody else too. We just ourselves make ourselves into a problem, and then we just proliferate that problem to all those around us. So this is our basic situation, and why we should make an effort to really cultivate this inner ability to be more aware, more conscious, and at the same time to give loving kindness, starting with ourselves. We have to make friends with ourselves. And from that also then to all other beings. So, here we have 3 questions which are dealing with negative emotions. To not having negative emotions. And how can I transform my anger from the past when I still feel it within me? So, as I say, in all the Buddhist schools, one of the main factors, apart from coming back to a recognition of our true nature, the other task is how to deal with negative emotions, and especially greed and craving, and anger and aversion, and then the fundamental ignorance underlying it all, because we don't see things how they really are. So there are many different levels of how to deal with negative emotions, and it's a big subject. Read a book on it. But anyway, in general, anger, for example, because that is a suffering, unsatisfactory nature of samsara is caused by clinging, grasping mind. It's not caused by the anger mind. So our clinging, grasping mind is very deep in our psyche, but because it often is in our mind associated with pleasure, therefore people don't want to get rid of that, although that's the real cause of the problem. But anger, people don't like anger because anger makes us feel bad, and then people don't like us, and then we get into conflict, and it doesn't make us feel good. So people are always interested how to get rid of anger among all the negative emotions. So there are various ways, but the one thing we will not do is to suppress. So therefore, if with some situation arises, one can manage that, to sit quietly which arouses a sense of outrage and anger while we're sitting quietly. Just bring up a memory which evokes a sense of anger. And look at it. And then look straight at it. What does it feel like? How is it? What does it look like? Just not reacting to it, but really knowing it. How it feels in the body. Where is it in the body? What is the feeling in the mind? How does it feel? Know it. Really look right into it without fear. This feeling actually is like a thick black cloud with lightning. But if we keep looking at it, eventually it will dissolve. And we will recognize that it really is very unsubstantial. It's very empty in Buddhist terminology. It's shunya. It's not a thing, it's not me, it's not mine. If we can stare at it nakedly, of itself, it will transform. So that's the best way to deal with it. If we can't manage that, then the next thing to do is to try to cultivate compassion and loving kindness to the object of whatever that feeling was. The opposite of anger, obviously, is non-anger. So therefore, the Buddha recommended loving kindness. When we practice loving kindness, we start with loving kindness to ourselves. This is very, very important. This is not just some New Age thing. The Buddha himself said, first, we have to make friends with ourselves. A lot of our anger towards others is because we are not at peace with ourselves, we're in conflict with ourselves. Because we're in conflict with ourselves, and we don't accept ourselves, and we're not friends with ourselves. Therefore, we are like a tight drum, which anything hits, it makes a loud sound, because inwardly we have that tension when it comes to our own relationship with ourselves. So first we have to heal that. We have to heal. And so therefore the Buddha said, first we start with giving loving kindness and compassion to ourselves, wishing ourselves well, imagining how wonderful it would be if we did feel happy, if we were free from suffering. And to forgive ourselves. I mean, all of us have faults. If we didn't have faults, we wouldn't need the Dharma. So, yes, we all have faults, no problem. That's not the problem. The problem is only if we don't accept the fact that we have faults and that we don't like ourselves because we have faults. But if we accept the fact that everybody has problems, okay, so what? And nonetheless, we begin to put a balm on the wounds so that they heal. Then, or we can think of it like, like a jug inside, and we're filling it up with nectar, with amrit. Then we can give to others. But if inside we're empty, or we are in conflict with ourselves, then what other people do becomes magnified. And we get so upset and angry, and then also we cannot forgive, and so forth. But the crux of the matter is that we are not at peace within ourselves. So first we have to be at peace within ourselves. And so this is why in the practice of metta or maitri and karuna, compassion, we start with ourselves. Then from that, to those we love, to those we're indifferent towards people then who have our own wounds, then we can quite easily be open towards all others. So our negative emotions, when they come up, we recognize them, we accept them, and then we see how in that moment we can transform them. But later we can do practices specifically for whichever is our particular problem, which is our particular negative emotion. I mean, they're in different, negative emotions have different practices to help. Like jealousy, then we practice rejoicing in the happiness of others, and so forth. So, the cause of our negative emotions is our ego. Merely to say, well, then I will have no ego, is not going to help. Right, the ego decides it's going to be egoless. That's not going to help. But what can help is first we heal our sense of self. Buddhism is always talking about no self, but it doesn't mean that we don't exist. It means that we exist at a very much deeper level than we normally understand. But on a conventional level, first we have to the sense of ego is going to walk on the path towards the dissolution of ego. We cannot walk on the path if that sense of self is fractured, weak, injured. It has to be healthy. But it's that ego which is creating these negative emotions. This greed towards what is pleasurable, aversion towards what is unpleasurable, all based on our essential not seeing things how they really are, our ignorance. So if we can eradicate ignorance, then automatically the negative emotions dissolve. They're all based on ego. In the meantime, we can use a palliative method of contentment and generosity and renunciation for greed, and loving kindness and compassion practices for anger, and so forth like that. But that won't completely eradicate those. Only a very deep insight into the nature of egolessness and the true nature of the mind will actually completely eradicate our negative emotions. But we can, lessen them in the meantime. Despite all the advantages which a householder's life offers, isn't the monastic life essential and critical to liberation? No. It's helpful. It's helpful insofar as, of course, there are less distractions, and most of the time is devoted to study and practice and so forth. But of itself, it's the mind which is liberated. So we can be wearing monastic robes and have an extraordinarily samsaric mind, let me tell you. Or one can be in the household with you know, a family and a workplace and have a very, very spiritual mind. It's the mind which is liberated. So, yes, it's very, you know, monastics are like the professionals. But nonetheless, I mean, just because people are wearing a robe and have shaven head does under all circumstances, then that's a very strong mind. And of course, many of the greatest masters, certainly in the Tibetan tradition, but also in the Japanese and Chinese traditions, are married and had families. They didn't go to the office every day, but nonetheless, they had quite, you know, busy lives. Many of them were like herbal doctors, or, you know, had many services to the community. But they were nonetheless very great masters, even though they had families. So, you know, the important thing is not to get distracted. And the household life can be distracting. This is the main problem. But the monastic life can be distracting too. You know, it's the mind that gets distracted. So I do think as a householder it is helpful to, from time to time, to do short retreats. That's like kind of recharging batteries in your apparatus, right? But you don't spend all your time being recharged. You have to go and use your apparatus, you know, you use your computers. That's why you're recharging. So, you know, if one can keep a mind which is fairly, you know, focused and clear and good-hearted in the midst of the, you know, household life and the tumult and chaos of city life, if despite all that one can more or less keep one's mind focused on what I mean, it's, you know, the traditional example is the lotus which blooms in the mud, right? Well, the lotus needs the mud. And then that, you know, if in the mud of samsaric existence, if from that you can, you know, emerge as a lotus, then that would be fantastic. So, I mean, yeah, you know, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the monastic life, obviously, but nonetheless, not to think, oh, well, you know, this lifetime, you know, I'll just do what I do, but, you know, I'll pray hard to come back and become a monk in my next life. That's not no. Right now, whatever your situation, that is the perfect situation to practice. How do you work on yourself if you accept yourself? Well, you have to accept yourself. I mean, we are who we are. And now, accepting us means that we accept, well, this is weakness and this is strength. It's like, you know, if you go to, you know, a gymnasium and you have to accept, well, you know, your muscles are flabby, but you're going to work on, you know, like do a workout and get strong. I mean, if we don't want to admit that we are, you know, flabby, then we're not going to get anywhere. But just because we recognize. I mean, so of course we don't get angry with ourselves or pretend not, you know, that there's no problem. We accept that there are problems. Of course, that's why we need a path. You know, I mean, but there's no problem with that. Yes, okay, I have a problem with my temper. Yes, I have a problem with being greedy. Yes, I have a problem with this or that. Well, that's what I'm going to work on. Like going to a gymnasium and saying, well, you know, your arms are really flabby, right? You get on the machine, you know. Then you get very strong arms, isn't it? So it's like that. Often I find myself finding reasons to avoid meeting friends for casual chit-chat, and I have always wondered if I'm being not generous with my time. Well, you know, one of the faults in speech, apart from lying and harsh speech and divisive speech, is being too caught up in chit-chat. Or kind of idle speech, which really doesn't lead to much. This is why the Buddha recommended that we should have good friends, meaning people who share basic interested in the sort of things which we are interested in, because then that encourages us. You know, we can meet together and talk about things which are, whereas otherwise just hanging out with friends who just want to talk about worldly things fills our mind with worldly thoughts. I mean, we have this very precious jewel of a mind, and we should be very careful with it. I mean, you know, really, I'm speaking to myself. I mean, we should be really careful. All of you have houses or apartments or rooms in which you live. And those rooms you keep very clean. I mean, you sweep them every day, you dust. And, you know, if we try to decorate it as nicely as possible, make it a pleasant place to live. But it's only a room. So then we have a body. And every day we shower and we keep our body clean. We try to eat the right kind of food. Maybe we try to do the right kind of exercise, and again, it's only the body. We're going to leave it behind. What are we taking with us, and from which we can never separate? The mind. But how much do we clean our mind? Sweep it, dust it, make it a beautiful place to dwell in. Decorate it nicely so that we feel comfortable. We feel at home. This is the point. The one place where we can never escape from is our own mind. It's the most precious thing we have. So why are we constantly filling it with junk, trash? I mean, even in our homes we throw out trash. Every day we clean our bodies. What about the mind? How much do we clean out the mind? How much do we throw out junk? How much do we bring in, which fills our mind with all sorts of useless things, including conversation? So we should be careful, because this is where we are dwelling, and the mind, our consciousness, will go on. At the time of death, we leave our home behind, we leave all our possessions behind, we leave all our family and friends behind, we leave our body behind. But the one thing we carry with us, well, two things. One is our karma and our consciousness, and our habitual propensities which we have developed in this life. So we should be careful, Because the one place we cannot escape from is our own mind. So why not make it something which is a pleasant place to dwell? And as human beings, we have language. We have the ability to communicate through language. So therefore we should also be very careful. Not only what we say, but what we listen to. And just whiling away our time, just gossiping and, just using language to distract the mind, it's not useful. So please find good friends, friends that you can sit and talk about things which really have some meaning, which will inspire your practice, and which, of course, you can have fun, nothing against having fun and laughing and enjoying, but nonetheless not just useless idle talk, because we can spend all our life listening to idle talk. Just turn on the television, plenty of idle talk. I mean, how often do you hear anybody say anything that's really worthwhile listening to? So be careful. We should all be much more careful. Is the practice the path, or wisdom the path? Well, practice is the path to lead to wisdom. Obviously. That's why we practice, to gain wisdom. Wisdom means seeing things how they truly are and not how they are projected by our distorted consciousness. We're not going into that here, but the fact is that most of what we experience is based on our unknowing. So we need to come back to a state of knowing, pure knowing. That is wisdom. For that we need practice. We take birth, we love, we make relationships, we make money, houses, we make babies, career, and die one day. All life we are constantly working. Why should we put in conscious effort to do all this if we know the end? Well, because if we do all this with awareness, then we are learning to come back to our basic nature. I mean, here we are stuck in samsara. Well, just saying, well, here I am in samsara, I don't want to be in samsara, is not going to end samsara. I mean, here we are, going round and round and round on the wheel. Then the best thing to do is to accept that we're doing all these things in our life, and we can do them with good motivation or with bad motivation. I mean, it's up to us. I mean, otherwise, what are we going to do? Either we kill ourselves, which doesn't seem to be very useful, because then we get reborn again, or else we just sit there. And hope that life will pass quickly. We have to act. And all these things are not in themselves wrong. I mean, we take birth, well, here we are. We love, we make relationships, this is all good. We make money because we need to live. We have houses because we need to stay somewhere. We have babies because otherwise the world would run out of people. Might be a good thing. We have careers and we die one day. Well, it's all right. So the point is that either we can do this with awareness or we can do this with non-awareness, and that's the point. Either we can do this to cultivate the qualities of the heart which are needed to come back to our true nature, or we just waste our time. In themselves, these things are not good or bad. It depends what we do with them. I mean, you know, it's not that, you know, having a career and having a family and working in itself is good or bad. But if we are totally distracted the whole time, or we think that these things are the be-all and end-all of life, then we just are part of the process. It's just going to carry on and on and on, lifetime after lifetime. If we nonetheless use all these qualities to develop the path, our workplace, our family, our children, then it's all leading to our final awakening. It's up to us. How distracted we become, how bogged down we become by all these things, or whether we use them to cultivate the inner qualities which are needed for awakening. In order to awaken, we need qualities like loving kindness and compassion and patience and so forth. For that, we need other people. We need life's challenges to develop, and as I say, to grow up. We're all trying to mature, to become adults finally. And for that, we need all these. But of course, you know, I mean, the problem is, you know, this endless round, how to get out. How should we act with toxic people in our lives? Give them lots of love. Tonglen, you know, this meditation where you take in the darkness and you give out light, that's very useful with toxic people. It changes the poison into amrit, into nectar. Without toxic people, how will we genuinely learn loving kindness and compassion? If we only have loving kindness and compassion to nice people, then, well, that anybody can have that. The real challenge is to have loving kindness and compassion to people who are absolutely obnoxious. Otherwise, how can our love be unconditional? And genuine love is unconditional. It's not a matter of whether that person is a nice person or not a nice person. Doesn't mean we condone their toxicity. Doesn't mean we say it's okay. It's not okay, and they're making bad karma. So we can have compassion. I mean, I think if we really are meeting with somebody who is very, very, really difficult, we can think, would I want their mind? And we would surely say, oh no. And so we can feel compassion. Imagine being imprisoned in a mind which does these things, says these things. How sad. A person whose heart is really at peace doesn't create problems for others. So if they do create problems, it's because inwardly they are not at peace. So then, without condoning what they are doing, we can nonetheless feel compassion. And genuine love for all beings. As I say, the sun shines on everybody, doesn't discriminate. Oh, at work, I'm confronted daily with applicants who are lying, cheating, being dishonest. Applying Dharma, I know that they want happiness in their lives, and that's why they do these actions. I should help them. However, practically it's wrong, and I shouldn't help them. What must I do? Well, as I said, you know, the fact that we have patience and compassion for wrongdoing doesn't mean that we condone it or that we're naive. For one thing, if someone is doing something wrong and we allow them to do it just because we're trying to be good spiritual practitioners, maybe that is not good for them, right? Because then they think they can get away with anything. So on the one hand, we have to have clear vision. We have to have, you know, some wisdom here. Compassion goes along with wisdom, and wisdom means seeing things as they really are. So if we see that people are lying and cheating and doing these things, it doesn't mean that we just allow them to get away with it. But nonetheless, if we can prevent it or deal with that situation, but without the base of anger or wishing to, you know, the point is, the Buddha said that karma is intention. So the point is not how we act, but the basic motivation or intention behind the action. So we can be very sharp. But if the intention is to help the other, or is out of seeing that allowing that person to get away with that would ultimately be of a problem for that person, then it's good to be sharp. Do you understand? I mean, for example, the Bodhisattva of Compassion, Avalokiteshvara, is shown white and holding a lotus and smiling and looking like everybody's idea of compassion, right? Sweet and smiling. But the other aspect of Avalokiteshvara is Mahakala, the great black one. He is the chief of all the protectors, the Dharma protectors. He's very wrathful. But the essence is compassion. It's the same being. But sometimes we have to appear wrathful or strict out of compassion. Doesn't mean that we are give in to everything or that we, you know, allow anything just because. If we see someone who is doing something wrong, that hurts them as well as others. So evaluating the situation, then we should decide how to act in a way which will maintain integrity and at the same time benefit them. Maybe by preventing them from acting in a way which karmically will be very negative for them, or that they will in the future carry on doing these negative actions. So it doesn't mean that we have to become weak. I mean, actually, patience and compassion are very strong. It's not a weakness, but it's seeing the situation very clearly and then deciding what is the best way to deal with that situation. So if you're dealing in your life with some people who are lying, cheating, and dishonest, and so forth, then you apply the Dharma in a way which will bring benefit to them, ultimately, not just in the moment. So one can be very stern, like a parent. If a parent only gives in to the children, and you know, because the children, you know, we don't want them to be unhappy because, you know, and they are naughty and lying and cheating, you would scold your children if you were a good parent. You wouldn't say, oh, but if I scold them, then they'll be unhappy, or I shouldn't scold them because I'm supposed to be loving. If you love them, then you will discipline them. Otherwise, you're not a good parent. How could it be? So if people are childish in their dealings with society, then one has to treat them as one would have treated one's own child. With compassion and love, but with great firmness. Not allowing them just to get away with anything. Because ultimately it doesn't help them. So Dharma isn't being weak. Dharma is seeing things very clearly and how to act appropriately, which might appear outwardly to be very stern. So again here, she said, how does one deal with being cheated upon? Well, exactly, you don't allow people to get away with things, if possible. I mean, being compassionate doesn't mean you're stupid. And it doesn't mean that we are naive. I mean, we have to see things very clearly. And as I said, as with a child, if a child is stealing or cheating, you stop that. It isn't kind to the child to allow them to get away with that kind of behavior. The child might be very upset at that point, but eventually, how else can they learn? So if someone is cheating us or being very abusive, then we have to stand up to that, but not from anger and fear, but from a genuine compassion and clarity of how to respond to their actions in a way which will prevent them from causing more harm.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, dear.
So how do you practice loving kindness in that situation if somebody is your lover and they cheat on you?
You love them, but I mean, that's as you would love a child. You love your child, but if your child is cheating, then you stop that child from doing that. Doesn't mean you don't love the child anymore. Isn't it? You know, and you also have compassion that the child should be acting in such a way. So if someone is acting in a way which is creating problems for you in this way, then you can prevent that or you can do something about it, but at the same time, not from an attitude of anger or, resentment or revenge, but from recognizing that they're acting in that way because, they don't see things clearly. And they're acting probably from their own ego obsession. So then you feel sorry for them, but you stop them. Or if they've done it and you can't stop them, then anyway, you just give them lots of compassion and love and hope that they will be well and happy. It doesn't mean that you condone what they do. But, we can love all beings, not just because they do what we want them to do. I mean, how sad, if someone does things like that, they're making very, very negative karma for themselves. It's very sad. I mean, the point is that we don't just love people who do things what we want them to do. We love everybody no matter what. But that doesn't mean that we agree that what they're doing is right. Do you understand? Huh?
Away, it's okay to walk away.
Well, you can walk away, or at least you can recognize that this is what they did, and it was not the right thing to do, and you're really sorry that they did it, but nonetheless, you don't want revenge. If they nonetheless, you wish them to be free from suffering and happy, because they're sentient beings and they're messed up like everybody else, and isn't that sad? Dear me, we're making such horrible karma for ourselves and other beings and creating so many problems. And we're so messed up and we just don't see things properly. And how sad that is. And if you think about that, then it's quite easy to feel a warmth towards them, even if they're hopeless. You know? Don't hold it in your heart, that's the point. Because if we hold resentment in our heart, then we are hurting ourselves. We're not hurting them, we're hurting ourselves, which doesn't make sense. We're doing to ourselves what only our worst enemy would wish for us, and that's stupid. So release it, let it go. Don't hold it. It doesn't mean that you agree that it was a good thing. It wasn't a good thing, but you don't have to hold it, you know. Let it go. We learn from everything, you know. Really, sweetheart, let it go. So I just would deal with this last one and then that's it, okay? You get all released. What I hear from you is what the Buddha said is similar to what Krishna said. Would it be correct to infer Krishna and Buddha were an avatar of Vishnu? No, it would not. Actually, Krishna's vision in the Bhagavad Gita is extremely different from the Dharma. But we won't go into it here. But of course, from a Buddhist perspective, the Buddha was not an avatar of Vishnu. But on the other hand, if you want to see Vishnu as like ultimate reality, then you could say that we are all avatars of Vishnu, because we are all aspects of ultimate reality. So, you know, in that case, Vishnu has billions of avatars. Why not? We are all avatars in one way or another, because we all have original Buddha nature. I mean, throughout history, great beings have been born into this world, and because we are so immersed in ignorance, then, you know, they come and they try to wake us up. And then, you know, for a moment, everybody begins to wake up a bit, and then we all fall back to sleep again. And so we hope again in the future, more great beings will come and try to shake us awake. It's very hard for us to wake up from the sleep of our ignorance. And in many different parts of the world, great beings have appeared, and in accordance with the culture of those countries, they have, you know, given a message of liberation. So we should be very, very grateful to that. And India, of course, is especially well endowed with very great beings who have been reborn again and again throughout Indian history and have had a tremendous influence on the whole of Asia. And so you can be very proud of that, because of any country in the world, nobody has given out more enlightened beings than India has. And so that's an extraordinary thing. And I mean, I think that despite everything which is happening in India as well as in the rest of the world, India still does hold that vision of something beyond our ordinary worldly existence. For example, as you know, in the times of India, they always have that little speaking tree. So in the middle of all the news about corruption and murders and rapes, and also every day the same thing, there's just that little paragraphs of sanity in the midst of samsara that just there to remind us what truth is in the midst of all this samsaric nonsense which they're reporting. And I don't know any other newspaper anywhere that does that. I think it's very Indian. It's very beautiful that every day, for how many years now, they have been reproducing from all traditions light in the midst of all that darkness. So, you know, and so the Buddha was born, chose to be born in India, Krishna chose to be born in India, Rama chose to be born in India, and that is part of your great heritage, of which really you should be very, very proud. because that was genuine wisdom which they gave. And, you know, this is something which even to today is still alive, despite everything going on around it. Our true nature is always there. It doesn't decrease or increase. It's always there, but we have to discover it. It's covered up. And so all these great beings, they're just pointing out, look in the right direction. And we will see it, because it's always there waiting for us to uncover. The traditional example is of a beggar who lives in a hovel, in a very poor little hut, and goes out every day to get a few paisa. And all the time in his hut underground is this huge treasure. He's really a kropati. He just doesn't know that. And so he thinks he's a beggar, but all the time he's enormously wealthy. But he's just not looking for his wealth in the right place. And so that's like us. We think that we are so impoverished, and therefore we try to look outside for comfort and wealth and satisfaction. And all the time, our deepest nature is total bliss and light and love and compassion and wisdom. But we're looking in the wrong direction. So these meaningfully to cultivate these qualities of the heart and the mind, so that, as I say, when the time comes, we can die without regret. Thank you.